Bună seara, bine v-am regăsit. Sunt Roxana Gabor-Iliescu și vă invit la o nouă ediție a emisiunii Sănătate, Trup și Suflet. Și dacă vorbim de sănătate, trup și mai ales suflet, rădăcinile noastre ale românilor și încărcarea noastră și tot ceea ce ține de energia noastră are legătură cu acest pământ. Și are legătură cu pământul ăsta nu doar cu ce a existat acum 100 de ani, 200 de ani, ba chiar 2000 de ani, și ce a existat mai înainte, ceea ce s-a păstrat în ADN-ul și în amprenta acestui pământ. Am auzit de multe ori vorbind de preotesele dacice, dacă mergem în Sarmisegetuza chiar sunt povești care circulă acolo despre ce făceau ele, dar totul e învăluit așa într-o legendă. Pe de altă parte, în ultima vreme au venit influențele zeițelor de altă, hai să spunem, religie sau de altă influență din India. Vorbim de preotesele de acolo, din India, sau cele din Egipt, sau într-adevăr zeițele din Grecia. Unde e un fir comun, dacă este un fir comun, ce făceau ele, ce se întâmpla pe vremea matriarhatului care a existat pe aceste pământuri, a fost bine, n-a fost bine, și care era rolul preoteselor și poate, de ce nu, de acolo vom trage concluzia și care ar putea să fie rolul femeilor din ziua de astăzi pentru vindecarea acestui pământ. Dar deocamdată să aflăm cu documente și cu dovezi ce făceau preotesele atunci. Și pentru acest lucru am deosebită plăcere să l-am din nou invitat pe Stephen Obe, cum îmi place mie să-l prezint mai dac decât mulți dintre români, un îndrăgostit de civilizațiile străvechi, arheolog prin astronomie, mi-a luat o vreme să înțeleg ce înseamnă asta, și care a studiat dovezile și tot ceea ce s-au găsit peste tot în lume și le-a pus cap la cap și a ajuns și la noi și a fost încântat de tot ce a găsit. De aici voi muta conversația în limba engleză. Okay, so after I said the short introduction about us and about the priestess and the goddesses and the whatever came from India and Egypt, now I would love to talk about what we have here. And actually first the connection between Dacian priestess or even Thracian priestess, Egyptians priestess, Greeks goddesses, Hindu ones.
All of it. Yes. The world of women.
The world of women, the magic of them.
Yes.
And how, I said, maybe we can understand how can we do it now.
Perfect.
To make it the harmony between man and woman, to understand exactly what are our privileges and duties.
Perfect. I would like to start with a beautiful symbol that you have behind you. If you can move your chair over because you actually can't see it.
Yes. Yeah.
I want the viewers to see it on the screen behind you if they can.
Simbolul de la Sănătate, Trup și Suflet.
Yes. That can be seen as a symbol of the womb and fertility. And most of the time it was the women that held that ankh, or that symbol of the womb. And it was the men that held the staff, the scepter. Sometimes they switched. Sometimes a man would hold that and a woman would hold the staff. That's when they would be showing that they're balancing. So it was like a symbol, like a doctrine.
Respect,
of respect.
And honoring.
Yes. But majority of the time, it was a woman holding that, like the statue of the Egyptian goddess that you see here of Hathor. She's holding the same symbol that you have behind you on the screen. The interesting
thing. The symbol of the show. Look at that. And actually, I didn't choose it. My husband did.
Yes, of course. Your husband's very aware of these things. The interesting thing is we can also find a similar symbol to that in Dacian and Thracian mythology, and it's known as the Swastika.
Okay.
The Ankh actually has
The good swastika.
Yes. And just to give a quick breakdown about that, the Ankh, that symbol of the womb, that you see Hathor and the symbol for your show tonight, has 4 directions in it.
Okay.
Okay, you got the top part, which represents the circular motion. Then you have the apex that runs across and the apex that runs down. The actual same symbol the Dacians used a lot in their jewelry, which is known as the swastika. This is a necklace here that was found in Romania, in the Dacian culture. And they also had earrings that they wore too, with the symbol on it. When researching this swastika or this symbol, it was known as the patterns of the Big Dipper. So when the Big Dipper moves through the season of summer, winter, fall, spring, it makes that pattern in the sky. So from an archaeoastronomy standpoint, all of the constellations, when they move, when planets go retrograde, they trace sacred geometry symbols in the sky.
Whoa.
That's where they
Okay.
got these symbols from tracking and tracing how the stars and the planets move.
Because we were discussing last time, Dacians and Thracians, they were studying, the stars, and they were guiding their life.
Yes. So from an archaeoastronomy standpoint, these ancient civilizations, their life revolved around heaven and earth, the stars and the earth below their feet. That symbol there represents women working with their womb. Nowadays, we call it womb healing. That was more or less called wound revitalization because it has a frequency or a tone to it, like a hertz.
Okay.
A hertz of 528, which is a hertz of divine love, of a tone of a frequency.
And I will tell our viewers, because we had a show about this, about womb healing. Deci dacă căutați în arhiva Sănătate, Trup și Suflet, găsiți o emisiune exact despre acest subiect. Okay, what Hathor has to do with Dacian priestess? How are they?
Because the Dacian priestesses were practicing a lot of this before the times of Egypt. We have to remember that the Ankh is a more up-to-date symbol. The swastika is way older than the Ankh. The swastika dates back all the way into the time of the Danube Delta in your civilizations that existed within that area. There's swastikas 4,000 or 5,000 years old. The most of the priestess training came from different parts of the world, like Egypt and India, but they were all under one banner or one program. And the priestess training was more of an evolution of women's empowerment that revolved around the matriarchal system. So the women were revered as pure, luminous beings. Some of them were celibate, some of them were pure, they were clean, they were not to be looked at, they were not to be touched. Because when a woman's womb is vibrating at a high frequency, it shakes and moves energy around her.
Wow.
So a woman's power, a woman's source, how she taps into that energy comes from the womb. Man taps into that vital life force in his reality from prostate, testicles.
Okay. And during matriarchat, so we are talking about matriarchat here in Romania, around what area?
Through the Cucutan, Danube Delta, and the Dacian and Thracian eras.
Okay, and what did that mean?
That meant that the woman ruled.
How?
The women ruled by keeping their womb clean.
Okay.
By living a pure diet and keeping their vibration high.
But not all women. You're talking about the priestesses.
Actual priestesses that were initiated into those schools of how to do that. Very similar to some of the modern day priestesses like the Marys in France, where you get Magdalene from. So the women had these teachings. They knew how to work with their womb. They knew how to create from their womb, and they knew how to birth civilizations, ideas, spiritual consciousness, uplifting for humanity and the space that they were in back then. And that was the main job of the priestess. Her role was to keep the spiritual energy high on the planet. That's why Burebista and Dacian saw these women as sacred and built so many temples and astronomical events around women. When I researched women empowerment and liberation in Egypt in those times, there was a lot there. But here in Romania, I've never seen so much before. Out of all the civilizations I researched, the woman archetype is by far the most noted in treasure and in archaeological findings.
I don't know if you can imagine how strange this seems now in Romania.
Yes.
When, woman, I don't know if she gave up of her powers or she was disempowered, and you know, I asked you before, what happened if the priestesses were keeping this energy high? What happened that everything collapsed?
Burebista was assassinated. And Burebista was assassinated.
And how was that possible?
Around the time of Julius Caesar. There's certain writings that some people have been researching where Julius Caesar and Burebista were assassinated around the same time. Julius Caesar was very much evolved with ancient mystery schools himself too, and a lot of older scripts believe that the archetype of Jesus came from that region of Egypt through Julius Caesar. Same with the Essenes in the Dead Sea Scrolls that the shepherd found in the cave.
Yeah.
And it talked about the Essenes, and it talked about Jesus and John the Baptist and living a pure life and cleansing themselves because they were in a role of a priesthood. So the priesthood and the priestesshood was very much alive in those times. Now it's priests and nuns. It's a big difference.
Yes. And again, so what was what happened?
So after Burebista was assassinated, from studying some of the hieroglyphics from certain treasures that have been found in this country, there's a little bit of a gap in time somewhere.
Okay.
So nobody really knows what happened after. All we know is the king Decibel didn't practice the same spiritual worship around women and matriarchal systems than Burebista did, and his partner Dacian.
And there's, again, some, I don't know, legends, but sayings that actually what happened was from within the priestess, that one of them or more betrayed it, or one of them or more were attracted to somewhere else, to Romans.
Exactly. There's a part,
promised something more.
And that's what happened here in Romania. So if we come back into traditional Romanian roots and more of a mythological aspect of Romania now, the women left the villages. The most beautiful women, from what I heard, lived in the villages. They worked the lands. They were strong. They were fit. They were healthy. They were very much connected to the mystical side of the Romanian traditions. And then they left for the cities, like Cluj, Sibiu, Bucharest. And then they left for New York, Canada, Toronto, Chicago,
Italy, Spain.
Spain. So there's a phenomenon that's happening right now where the women are starting to gather these men from these European and North American countries and bringing them back into Romania to help develop and rebuild their country. And that's, for me, the job of a priestess, finding educated, intellectual men that can help rebuild and repair the kingdom of Romania.
I'm proud to wear, and thank you again.
Yes.
I realized I didn't have a belt, and you lended me so now I feel like a Dacian priest. And can we just assume, well, if Dacian priestesses were here now, what would they do for Romania, for example?
Well, there's 3 steps to a priestess and a priest's path. And the revolution starts from inside. And what happens with a man, for my example, I went through the phase of a prince, which is the first phase of a man. Then as a man moves from archetypal standpoint, so the archetype of a prince, spoiled, not really balanced and focused on anything for the betterment of humanity. Then they learned how to move into the phase of a magician, where they become a lover. They work within certain fields of how to properly respect women and hold space and be there for their careers and pleasure. And then from there, they move into what's known as a king or a god. The kingship. The woman goes through a similar phase. So it starts out as a princess, where her crown's a little crooked and she's constantly straightening it back out again. Then from a princess, she moves into a priestess, which is a woman's version of a magician. Then from a priestess, she moves into her queenship, into her goddess. So the priestesses were always one level under the goddess. Then when a woman became queen, she became the goddess. So at the time, I really don't know in this moment, or I forget the name of Berbice's queen, but I like to call her Bendis.
Okay.
And the reason why that these goddesses' names were used, because that's what the queen was bringing in. It was very similar in the times of King Arthur, and in his, it was more of the order of the Merlin and that masculine archetype of the magician, and King Arthur going through his phase of the prince and turning into the magician and going through initiations with Merlin, then Guinevere coming and saying, let's build a kingdom, because she had the money and the resources to do it. So, you know, back in ancient traditions, it weren't the men that were wealthy, it was the women. And the women chose the man that she wanted to move into the kingship to rule the kingdom. But it was a balanced union. So it was the man and women that worked together, but it was the women that funded the operations, because they were the ones that had that material aspect of the womb. And it was the man's job to grow and evolve spiritually. And that's the job of the priestess. Okay,
so what you're saying is that right now, let's say a priestess, if they were here,
yes,
they will heal themselves first,
yes,
and they will continue to do that in circles.
Move through that trichotomy, work within womb circles with women, help develop women, learn how to power other women around them, and then find a solid group of men that they can build a reality with and balance that masculine and feminine out together.
So anyway, the first step should be women's.
The first step should always be women, because when a woman's in any type of pain, or if a woman's in any type of suffering, they need to be with the sisterhood.
Why?
Because they become easy prey for the brotherhood. I'm being honest. When a woman's going through trauma, when she's having certain life experiences, when she's struggling, from a practical and theoretical standpoint, they need to be close to women.
Okay.
Because the men aren't educated nowadays like they were a long time ago. So it's very easy for a man to mislead a woman that's suffering into more suffering, rather than taking her out of that suffering.
And what about men? I've seen a lot of men, including mine, that are saying, well, I feel the power of what you're doing. I can feel the power of sisterhood. Would you still need us after you will be strong enough?
Of course, because there's certain aspects to a man that you can never have. There's certain qualities to scientifically that you're never going to connect to. The first thing that happens when man and woman meet This is ancient teachings from the priestesses. They had an understanding when they were in front of a man, they would feel their ovaries spin inside their body. So a woman that had a very advanced womb and a womb that was very sensitive and very powerful and strong, when a man comes around, their ovaries would spin. The faster the ovaries would spin, the faster that ankh, that symbol, would start to reciprocate around her body. She knew that that was an evolved man for her. What happens nowadays is when man and woman meet, women feel their ovaries tingling, man feels sperm swinging because it's a scientific reaction first. And then what we do is we do a whole bypass of the whole initiation of priest and priestess, and we go right into sexuality. And that's the problem that the earth's in nowadays. We're not educated enough to know whenever I'm around a woman, if I feel sperm tingling and I feel aroused, it's not I'm feeling aroused from her, I'm feeling her ovaries. I don't have to attract myself to every set of ovaries that comes in front of me.
What should I do?
With
this arousement and with what I feel as a man?
What does a woman do with that arousal?
No, what a man, because that's the typical man excuse.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm next to you, the only thing I can think is going to bed to you and
play with your body, massage, tickle you, cuddle with you, write a book, create a new business plan, meditate, use how it's called sexual transmutation, which is what the priestesses taught a man how to do. That was a part of the role. It wasn't having sexual encounters with them. It was from an archaeoastronomy standpoint and anthropology, most of the studies revolved around men having monk-like qualities and celibate qualities around them. They were the most powerful men. Even men in our modern day time, Tesla practiced a lot of that. The man that was one of the founding fathers of psychology and psychotherapy, Carl Jung. He was celibate for 40 years of his life. Steve Jobs practiced times of celibacy. A man's most intelligent space and most highest points of creativity is through fasting and transmutating that sexual energy and using it for something to build on the planet. Most of these ancient peoples practiced that way to begin with a long time ago. And some of us still have that knowledge.
And what you're saying is that what in nowadays, this practice that you're saying arrived here as Tantra, are you saying that this practice, we knew it millenniums?
The Dacians and the Thracians were practicing that, and even in some of the Thracian...
And did it have a name? Or
they never had names, and they only had first names. They didn't have first and last names, so it was one name, and that's how they represented everything. And most words like we hear of Merlin, it was an order of Merlin. When you hear the word Enoch, it was an order of Enoch. When you hear the word Melchizedek, it was an order of Melchizedek. When you hear the word Uriel or Mikael, it's the order of Uriel and Mikael, and there's seats of archetypes that revolve around them. And are nowadays, because we're so fixated in the time of Jesus and those teachings, we're fixated around singularity. We're fixated around one person, and one man, rather than groups of people. One man will never have all the answers, and it's always the women that had the answers. So the priestesses, the Burabista or Dechaneos would go to the women and say, look, what should we do? How do we evolve our nation? How do we unify Thracian, Dacian? How do we build the world's largest empire? That was done through women. Same in our native teachings. The chief went to the grandmothers. It's always been that way.
And what did change? How?
It changed from man not being able to feel comfortable within himself to allow a woman to be free. It's very difficult for a man to really honor a woman's independence and freedom. We're so used to controlling our reality, and we're so used to controlling our destinies that it's not an easy process for us. And when we do move into a space of becoming a king or a god, we move in the archetype of Carl Jung's theory. We move into that phase. Because when you move into the phase of the god or the goddess or the king and the queen, love's not conditional. It's just freedom, divine love.
As a woman, I would prefer to blame men, but then going back, I realized that the men's fear has, let's say, a reason or a root in women's behavior.
Well, of course, because men scientifically are created to be localized. Women's body is created to be receptive. It's not localized in one area. Man's life is localized and focused. Women's receptive. So when man's intending a specific energy towards something or something, it's straight to that point. So when a man's feeling fear, that fear is very strong. It's being directed and focalized. When a man's feeling love, it's very strong. It's being directed and focalized. When a woman's feeling fear, it's receptive and it's chaotic and it's all over the place. When a woman's feeling love, it's chaotic. It's reciprocating.
Overwhelming. Come on, not chaotic.
And I mean the word chaotic through science, because that's the way. Chaos theory in quantum physics truly doesn't become chaotic only until expansion. So you can measure a particle that is stable, but as soon as that particle starts to expand, it becomes chaotic. So when a woman's aura and when a woman's life starts to expand, it creates chaos, but not chaos in disorganization or disharmony. Chaos in the fact of expansion in something that's uncontrollable. Women are wild creatures. They're always going to be wild creatures. You can't control a particle from moving to an absolute finite equation to expanding into a multitude of equations. You can't control that. It's the same thing with a woman. And again, that's that symbol of that Ankh or the symbol of the Swastika that you have. That's what that represents.
And that we had a lot of on our national...
Yes.
But then during the communism, they tried to hide this, saying that, it's with Nazis. That has nothing to do with the Nazis.
It was even before Buddhism, the swastika. It was Dacian in Thracia that has some of the oldest drawings of the swastika.
Okay.
Or the movements of the stars and constellations.
I don't want to go into why Hitler took the swastika and why did it switch it. Anyway, you can Google it.
You can take any geometry, any logo, and do whatever you want with it. If you look at a Canal 33, that's a very, very powerful logo. You're using the color green, which represents purity and love, and you're actually using two digits of 33, which represents the 33rd vertebrae that goes into the occipital ridge when the spine ends, when it goes into the neurological center. And a lot of the Masonic and the Illuminati rules revolves around the 33 degrees, which are the 33 initiations to move up the spine into the occipital ridge to achieve consciousness and divine union through sensuality and sexuality.
And there's something to do with medicine too, because if you say 33, that's a way that's vibrating, I don't know exactly, but it's something to do with medicine.
Yes.
And of course it has to do with the 33rd year of Jesus that got illuminated, because it's all together.
So we use these symbols to attract certain things to us. And
we started from Hitler and why he used swastika reversed.
Exactly. And the reason why you can use things reverse is because the energetic system in our body, when it starts to go reverse, it's moving into the past.
Okay.
When the energetic system goes forward, it's moving into the future. So when someone's aura or energetic body is reversing and moving backwards, that means they're stuck in the past and they're processing past situations. So when we're speaking together, I glance at the energetic body the odd time, and I can see when you're going to talk about something from the past and when you're going to bring something up in the future by the movements and the gestures of your body and how you sit back and how the energetic system revolves around that. So Hitler was a great fan of ancient civilization. So if he's opening up a portal, if he wants to do research, he needs to go in reverse because he needs to go into the past to discover all the esoteric and spiritual treasures of ancient civilizations. That's all that was.
Too bad that, yeah, good intention could be transformed into what it was transformed.
Yes.
And going back to the priestesses and to the, there were also, how do you call it, Amazone?
Yes, there's ancient texts of Amazonian women.
Okay,
was, not here,
okay.
But close resemblance. So I found some artifacts in the Museum of Costanza and then Mongolia around the Black Sea where there's very tall, powerful women that resembled taller than you. And a good example of this are these discs.
Okay.
These discs they found in a county called Lupul, around the Alba County. From my research of Egyptian goddess research and Sumerian and Babylonian bee and matriarchal system worship, the Dacians were doing exactly the same thing. Now, when you look at the size of these discs, they're very big. So there's an amazing man from Cluj, an archaeologist, that can make almost anything of the treasure that's found here. He made these. If you count the number of discs that are on this woman's body, there's 13 of them, roughly. Now, if you have these discs and these women have these going down their body, you're going to have to be pretty tall or these are going to be dangling down to the ground.
Yes.
And if you look closely at these discs, if you do your research, you're going to see them wearing bracelets.
Okay.
And
These bracelets?
Similar bracelets, more of the singular bracelets. The fibulas, which are the clips that they found with these,
yes,
that would hold this whole outfit together. Fibula would look like this. This is a replica of the Dacian fibula, this piece here that's holding this treasure together. They were very large, like this big. And this whole setup, believe it or not, is an Alba museum. So
I will start again to go to the museums.
The museums have, when you look in the eyes of a priestess or a matriarchal system, you'll see it all. Most people are looking through the eyes of the baptism, so they're missing a lot of information,
history, yeah.
A lot of history.
And the bracelets?
The bracelets were worn by priests and priestesses, and we talked about that on the show yesterday. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. And we spoke a little bit about this on the show yesterday, and you said it perfectly. They're diplomas.
Yes.
So each initiate...
And again, very big.
Again, very big, depending on the mystery schools that they went through, would get this diploma. The bigger the bracelet, the more seals,
very beautiful.
The more evolved.
Okay. Because they are also the sign of what we can find in Romania Lover, like the spirals.
Yes.
And also we go, well, I thought of Kundalini, about energy, about everything.
Yes. There's actually two snakes. There's Kundalina and Kundalini. Kundalini is the masculine snake, and Kundalina is the feminine snake. When a man and a woman are connected to these two sources of energy, those snake-like patterns come out through the top of the head.
Which we know
which you know. So there's two snakes. But again, everyone only talks about Kundalini. They don't talk about the feminine aspect of the snake of Kundalina.
So actually what I do experience is Kundalina. So the woman experience the feminine aspect of the snake, or?
Depending if they have that understanding. This is the tricky part. Because we're not educated in the world of true duality,
yes,
we're missing a lot of things. And in some of the Thracian artifacts that they found, there's ancient sexual rituals carved on jewelry of men and women entering each other.
As you said, Thracian Tantra.
Thracian Tantra. And there's snakes coming out of their body as they're connecting, and there's men holding 2 snakes, 3 snakes swirling around their body. And if the interesting thing is, when you research internationally, they talk about these things. There's books written on Thracian and Balkan magic. There's books written, English books written on these rituals and certain things that they practice. But because Romania is a fairly new country, they're only 30 years old, they don't have a lot of access to international information about their people and their ancestors that once lived here.
Well, if you look and if you really want to understand, you can read the Romanian stories and pasme, as we say.
But the ancient stuff, the Thracian and the Dacian stuff, is very there and predominantly seen and known. And a lot of it is in international text and international study.
Well, then I provoke you for another show. Maybe we will put the red thing so it's after, how do you say, it's over 15 or over 18, so we can talk freely.
Yes.
About what the Dacians and Thracians magic was.
Of course.
But until then, I want to do the circle of harmony, because what I feel is my mission in this life is to work with women, but not into the feminist way, and not into the, we are the Amazons, we don't need men, but into understand, feel, and heal the wounds. And also the mistakes, to forgive and to ask for forgiveness. Because what I experienced is that we did some harm stuff to men, and men pay back.
Yes.
So, on your opinion, how could this forgiveness can take place?
For myself, I practice forgiveness by having the women that are around me and in my companies, either friends or partners, to be totally free. And that's how I practice my forgiveness. No matter how much I find myself moving in a direction that's unhealthy for her, I put a stop to it right away. And that's how I practice forgiveness for myself.
And how a woman could practice forgiveness?
Very similar. When she finds herself wanting to control a man or experiencing some jealousy, she needs to allow that to flow.
What do you mean, allow that to flow? Well, I do. Again, I'm devil's advocate.
Yes.
And maybe if woman hears this from a man, it's a different story.
Well, of course. And Marilyn Monroe said it the best. And Marilyn Monroe made a statement that the most disempowering thing for a woman is try to liberate herself from man.
Okay.
And I met some of the most powerful women in the world, women that are feeding countries, women that are literally doing serious work out there. I've sat with some of these women that are serious players out there in the world. And the most successful women that I met, women that work for the Bill Gates Foundation, women that work for different foundations around the world and are dealing with millions and billions of dollars. They have no interest in being more powerful than the man, because they're educated enough to know that they need man to move into the direction that they want to move into.
How? Because this is a very, we know that you need a man to get up, so you climb on man to get up, which is not healthy.
You need a man to come down.
Okay.
To ground. Men are more naturally grounded and connected to the earth, believe it or not. because we
Even
have the
though
staff.
we are connecting to Mother Earth, which is mother, which is...
Women are more connected to the lunar.
Okay.
Men are more connected to the solar. The lunar aspects of a woman are very galactic. And most of the women are experiencing galactic movement through their body, lunar, the moon changes, a woman shifts, a whole woman's reality revolves around her cycles and what the moon's doing. So it's not easy for her to be grounded and centered because of the hormone system they have, the womb cycle, and the actual moon itself that controls their reality.
What should they do? So this dance.
Yes. A woman, when she's on her womb, I like to call it a womb because it's a little bit more pleasant to say period or menstrual cycle. She needs to be using sanitary products. So the products that you're buying from grocery stores, like tampons and these plastic diapers that women are putting on their body, number one, you shouldn't be doing that at all. There's products out there that are called Deva cups, where a woman can insert a soft, gentle cup, and the blood comes out. She can give it back to the earth, her menstrual blood. There's organic cotton napkins, dispensers that a woman can wear where she can rinse it out and clean it and recycle it. There's a whole protocol for a woman's cycle where she could be more empowered. Most of women's distress comes from toxic shock syndrome, which is not cleaning and keeping herself sanitized and changing her underwear on a regular basis and watching the foods that she's eating. That's where most of the hormone balances come from. And that was taught to me through the grandmothers and some of the tantrikas and priestesses that I worked with. Once a woman takes care of her menstrual cycle and sees it as a very sacred act and treats it that way, her whole life transforms.
Wow. Well, I don't want to finish this show.
And again, that's ancient teachings from the priestesses of Dacia and Tracia. They had that information. The Aboriginals, when a woman had her moon, they would light a fire, she would dance for 3 days and just let that blood flow and it would be finished. And she was respected and she had her own tent and she had her own space and she was worshipped and she was on her cycle.
Well, here is considered dirty. But that's another story.
It's clean. You know the stem cells and what you can repair within the human body from the menstrual cycle or the womb blood that comes out of a woman, scientifically proven.
No.
Serious stuff in there, man.
Whoa, you're revolutioning everything, and please just promise me you'll come back. We didn't have the time to discuss what's this
People
about,
can see them.
but they're nice and they come from our history.
Yes,
Thank
and
you
other
again.
histories. Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, and
You're
I'm
welcome.
waiting for you for next time. Dacă vă simțiți cum mă simt eu acum, adică pur și simplu că toată lumea mea și credințele și, mă rog, ceea ce știam noi că ar trebui să fie curat și necurat s-au destrămat puțin sau au ieșit așa haotic, adică feminin la iveală, să știți că nu sunteți singure. Vă doresc să aveți o seară binecuvântată și cine știe, poate visele ne vor arăta mai multe din științele pe care noi le aveam odată și cumva s-au dispersat, au ajuns în străinătate, iată, acum se întorc. Chiar aștept comentariile dumneavoastră și cam ce ați dori să mai aducem în emisiunea Sănătate, Trup și Suflet. Vă doresc o seară binecuvântată, rămâneți pe Canal 33, la revedere!
Această emisiune v-a fost oferită de Aqua Carpatica.